got well.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm saying good evening because that's the time that I'm recording this. It's Sunday evening. Beautiful day, beautiful weekend. Definitely had an extended weekend. And, for my friends and loved ones that are probably watching this because you got it from Facebook, thanks for rejoining me. Welcome to the channel, Fighting the Enemy, where we're going to talk about every 30-year-old's favorite topic, every single 30-year-old's favorite topic, which is dating. And so before I start getting right into the show, there's a couple of shout outs I want to do. First and foremost, because I did try to do a live stream, I think it was early December or super late November, and that crashed and burned. And that's because I really underestimated how difficult, tough, and nuanced streaming and just recording is in general. So a lot of things I underestimated and did not anticipate. And so for those who are rejoining me and rechecking out the channel /link and seeing my face again, first of all, you don't see me in a pretty fancy three-piece suit, and I got my whole winter face on. And so streaming, I am going to go look more professional than this, but I intended to do a pre-recorded video first because it's more easier for me to test and not waste anyone else's time and then embarrass myself. So some of the things you're probably already experiencing and seeing right out the gate is I got white light. The camera itself looks less grainy, and that's, I think, mostly because of the change of my light bulbs. And also what's not going to happen again is that my camera is not going to crash on me and the audio is not going to crash on me because I learned from my lesson. So now what I got? Backup camera. So I do have to adjust this brightness. I got it today and I'm still tinkering with it, and so I'm not sure why it's like a shade or two like dark, but clearly the quality is a little bit better than the laptop camera, because it is a lot more clear. So I might keep this one on, and then also have the sound effects. We'll get into that in a moment once I start hitting some of my high points, and then the backup audio device just in case if the main audio cuts off. And taught myself how to use OBS Studios, which is what I'm recording this with. I have my Stream Deck set up here with me, so that's how you were able to see the outro, the intro music, and then me changing from that beautiful picture of me holding my mom, which is when I was in the Marines in 2012. That's when I graduated from boot camp, and they found me. There's a tear-jerking story behind that picture, but we'll save that for another day. And amongst other things here that I have all set up for you to show you that I did learn a lot between my mistakes, and I put the hours in. I saw the tutorials, many tutorials, and did read through all the nuances, replayed, did step-by-step instructions and all that goodness. So it feels good that I came a long way in a way to have this better setup and slight increase in production value. So again, sorry for those who were originally there and saw me crash and burn, but we're here now, and we're in a lot better shape. And just shout outs to the original crash and burn. And I'll save it for the end what sound effect that was, and we'll hear it one more time. The hint where I got that from is the blue bomber. So for my gamers out there. So again, the channel Fighting the Enemy. We're going to be talking about dating, and particularly in the context of men. The angle for men. I am a proponent for men, and to give some background on why I'm doing this and picking up this hobby is let me go ahead and share my screen and go to my YouTube channel here. Is if you guys can see here, and hopefully this isn't coming up messed up. So as you see in the description here, that I'm going to highlight, since my separation from the Marines in 2018, I came to realize date life in New York City has been severely transformed. This channel aims to explore and discuss the dating landscape for those who are marriage-minded. Very, very key statement right there, marriage-minded. You want to replace marriage with long-term serious or whatever other phrase you have, rock and roll. The goals of this channel is to have healthy, guided discussions on what it takes to find a spouse, as well as provide guidance on how to navigate the ubiquitous female predation of men. Now, the reason why I bring that up, I mentioned that there is because what all that really means is the whole finesse thing, right? Like, this thing is extremely out of hand, and as a 30-year-old man who's single, who lives in New York City, who's doing pretty okay for their life. I live alone, great credit, money in the bank. I've been at my current employer for 3 years. Things are great there. They're like an extended family there to me. So shout outs to them. You know who you are. And, things are pretty good. But something that I keep experiencing, and it's a combination from both of dating apps and just women that I meet in person, is this whole finesse thing, right? Like, I'm gonna get as much out of him for free without giving anything in return. Or in other words, I'm gonna deceive you, make you believe that I'm into you, but really I'm not. I'm just trying to So pretty much just take advantage of them for whatever resource that they can gain from you, whether it's emotional validation or you're a temporary emotional crutch for them to help them bounce back on to the guy that they're really talking to and really interested in, or they're just using you to get like literally a free ride or a free meal. And in my experience, that it has rarely happened. Yes, it has happened to me twice, in particular when I was 20, and there's a couple of women that go to some extremes in my recent experiences in the last 3 years of my life, where they have went to an extreme to gain very little from me, but they did find the chinks in the armor. And so if I keep looking down, because I have a couple of notes here to prevent myself from steering off course. And I'm really happy that the sound effects are working, and hopefully you guys will get a kick out of it. And so we went through over the channel purpose, and as the name of this video implies, what has happened to dating? What has happened to dating? What has happened to dating? And so I'm gonna go ahead and shoot out 10 years back to when I was 20, and I'm still healing from my previous relationship that was in there for a year and a half, so about 18 months roughly, and that crashed and burned in a very bitter way. But when I did kind of started getting out of that hole, and I was already in the Marines, and sadly enough my father passed away at this point, it's very interesting, because at that point in time, not to say that some of the elements and things that I experience now didn't exist back then, because it certainly did. It just wasn't as abundant, right? It wasn't super duper common, and a reason for that could be because I'm a 20-year-old, right? Like, no one goes up to a 20-year-old unless they're rich, I guess. But no one goes up. The general person does not go up to a 20-year-old man and expect them to have like resources and a stable life and living alone and stuff like that, right? That's not the expectation of the 20-year-old in general, right? The expectation of a 20-year-old man. So that could be kind of the reason that I'm speaking of. That could be kind of the reason why experiencing dating at that age is in stark contrast to what I'm experiencing now, but it doesn't change the point that element of finessing was still around. And then me coming from a predominantly Dominican neighborhood, because I'm from the Bronx here in New York, and they refer to as a chapeadora, right? Like, she's out there to find a sucker. She's gonna make a sucker out of you. Like, she's gonna dupe you for what you got. And so to just move on to the next point, I've broken down this analogy called H.I.D.E.N. So H-I-D-E-N, and it stands for hedonism, immaturity, delusional, entitlement, and a narcissism. So five is hidden with one D instead of two D's. And so the first one, hedonism, for those who don't know, and of course feel free to Google define, go to Google University to figure out anything you don't know, get out there and educate yourself for free. And but hedonism is the how do I explain it? So is the philosophical moral theory or notion that people live in a way to maximize their pleasure, how they gain pleasure, or just gaining pleasure in general, at the same time of reducing pain, anything that's uncomfortable or anything that puts them in discomfort or anything that's unideal and non-favorable, right? So maximize pleasure and reduce pain at the same time. That's hedonism. So when someone says, hey, you're a hedonistic person, it's like they're trying to describe someone that's like just constantly lusting for the things that make them feel good, right? And so you combine that with immaturity, right? And so for me, when I say immaturity, especially at now, contemporary time, something that I constantly bump into is women who are not financially responsible. They're living way out of their means because of their hedonism. The best example, and I'll get more into it in a later point in this video, is what I call the travel girls, right? All I want is travel. 9 out of 10 girls. Go on any dating app right now, any, I guess, robust dating app or trustworthy dating app. And what does 9 out of 10 women have on their apps? From the ages of 21 to whatever, 35, however you want to shoot that range. They all mention 3 things, and we can swap out the other 2 for whatever it is, but traveling is always mentioned there. And they sink themselves into debt. They sink themselves into unideal financial circumstances just so they can go somewhere, come back, and not gain anything out of it. Or to, I guess, chase this illusion of happiness or whatever it is. But that gives me a good segue to get to the next letter of the acronym D for delusional. And I think I really get this notion from my anecdotal experience, of course, that really just the double standards. So I guess that D I could add it in to spell hidden properly, I guess, now that I think about it. Or I could just replace delusional with double standards, because there's a bunch of that. And my favorite example, and particularly living here in New York City, so I live in one of the hearts of the city, which is downtown, not too far from Soho. And let me just be careful with the way I say this. So my best example, especially as someone who lives here in the city in a super congested area in Manhattan, is that when a woman is like, hey, I can't talk to no man that doesn't have a car, but she doesn't have a car herself. And so for me, someone who's doing pretty okay, there's no reason for me to have a car, right? Like, I'm less than a half hour away from my job, and I'm just gravy. My life is gravy without it. There's no reason for me to add that expense or, incur that inconvenience. And so you have women out there that put up double standards like that. They expect things from men that they cannot provide themselves, or let alone even obtain themselves. And I really think that's okay. Like, there's no self-introspection. There is no conversation in the mirror about what it is that they're putting out there, or their self-image, or like how they're going to be portrayed or perceived by having these double standards and somewhat deluded expectations, because they're getting high in their fantasy. And so I'll go on to my next point, which is entitlement. Entitlement. Excuse me. Yeah, entitlement. I do have a slash mark here for entitlement, because it's entitlement slash elitism. Elitist women. It's the most common thing in America. I'm sure of it, even though I haven't been to all 50 states. But in my times in the Marines, I've been around enough, and I'm sure that all of my fellas that are from a city in their respective states can definitely relate to this. Entitlement slash elitism, right? Like, they talk about what they want as if, like, what is it? I'm trying to think. Like a monarchy, right? Is like the divine right, right? Like, it's, right? Like, God has placed a man on this earth for me, and I just have to find him because I deserve it. So I won't have anything less, or their favorite phrase, I won't settle for less. So so it's horrible. And if you think about what I just finished describing, and then the hedonism, the immaturity, and the delusional slash double standards, the entitlement, the elitism, they're living outside of their means, right? That's their maturity. They're entitled, being delusional, thinking like, yeah, I'm gonna get Richie Rich at the grown up Richie Rich. I'm gonna get him, even though like I'm not a complete person myself. I'm just gonna sit here, put my hand out, and say, hey, I deserve this because I breathe air and look really nice, or whatever the case may be. And that's literally the demeanor, the notion, the character that they propagate, that they advertise, at least here in the the dating scene. And it's really uncomfortable, right, to be in the receiving end of that. Like, and we'll get into more details most likely in another episode. But it's hard to describe it without using a very specific instance, which I do have. I keep my receipts, but we'll save that more for the end, when we really start rolling out the content to the channel. And the last letter, N, narcissism, right? Which just makes sense with the last two things I said, the entitlement and the elitism, the narcissism, right? Everything is about me. Gentlemen, go out there, look at the 9 out of 10 dating profiles from, I guess, again, the robust or most trustworthy dating app out there, and count for me. Ladies, you can go out there and do that too if you're watching this video. Count for me how many times you meet a woman, whether in person, or the easiest way to gauge this in a mathematical sense, to create a metric out of it. Go on a dating app and then count how many women in their bios, how many women in their own self-pitch in some dating context do they start off talking about, or even mention in general, start off and in the middle, intro, body, conclusion, wherever, do they talk about what they bring to the table or what they can offer to a man? How can they be a boon to their life? And I'll wait. And then you wait some more. And then generally the way some of these dating profiles read, because of their entitlement and their elitism and their narcissism. There's a lot of passive aggressive stuff out there, and we'll go through some of that. And if I come across any in the next couple of weeks, I'll definitely take screenshots and share. But I think it's very interesting how they speak of their pets, and particularly their dogs, in higher regard than human beings, that being men. And so for my dog moms out there, and you're not a dog mom, you're a pet owner, right? Like that did not come out of your womb. I have this for you. And for my video game fans, brownie points if you know where I got that sound effects from. I'll give you a hint, and you're not gonna believe it, but I'll give you a hint. That came from a horror game. And one more time for the dog moms out there. And so when a woman starts telling me about her pet and speaks about it in a higher regard than men, than human beings, that song plays in my head, and I just go to my happy place. But and so that's what I believe the reasons to be of how we got to this current state of affairs in terms of the dating landscape, and particularly me being here in the big city, in the Big Apple. And my next point to it, and I think is always interesting, that when I talk with men that are older than me, 40s, 50s, and if they're single, it's actually just horrifying how much they can relate. Like, and it's like we're from different generations, different upbringings, and in some cases they're from completely different states. And the fact that, like, virtually the same, and then I put a lot of emphasis on that word, virtually the same exact gripes, the same exact experiences. And yeah, you can argue, because it's like, yeah, you're in the city, but and particularly one gentleman, and I hope to have you on this show one day, he's not even in the city anymore, and he's not even from the city. But to explain and then relate to so many, and when I say relate, I don't mean like in a similar, I mean like literally virtually, meaning it might as well just be the same, because there's like 1% difference, 1% less difference of some of these experiences and encounters. And it's like, how could this be? And so there's always this notion that, are things the way they are with women in particular, in terms of like that journey to be married and have a family, is it the culture or is it the generation? And so you have, like, I always propose this this argument, is it the culture that's wrong, or is it the generation that just, how do you say, depreciated to this form, right? Is it a self, like every generation that came by, did it self-deprecate to this, to the way that it is now? And so for me, and I came up with this, just thinking to myself and rewinding some of the discussions and arguments that I had with some of my older gentlemen, colleagues and peers, is that I always argue that is the culture that's wrong, right? Because gold diggers are nothing new. Like the way my friend told it to me, but I'm gonna say it in the nice way to avoid I guess anybody flagging the video and complaining. But he said, same trick, new bird, right? And I guess the raunchy version of it, and cover your ears if you don't want to hear this, is that same hoe, new trick. And it's true. And so if you take that statement or phrase literally, right, like we have the new generation of technology that's just exposing a culture that already exists. And so by exposing it and putting it on cameras and putting it on videos and writing it on all these different social media platforms, you inadvertently or through an unintended consequence propagate it, right? So now it's going to proliferate and propagate because now it's out there. And there's going to be some people who say, hey, look, this is a good idea. And then there's going to be those who say, look, if it worked for her, it's going to work for me, so I should do it too. And so I think that's how we got to the way we did. Because, and particularly, and you know who you are, we were together on having a beer at a local Irish bar, and there's this song that played, and it was right there in the tip of my head, the artist. It was that song where it's like, if you like pina coladas, getting caught in the rain. Dang, alright, so if I remember, I'll like type it in somewhere or just leave it in the comments. Or yeah, I'll just write it in the comments and I'll leave a link there. So in that song, if I remember the lore or the context of that song correctly, I don't remember if it was the ex-boyfriend, ex-wife, or one of them. One of the exes was looking through, I think it was the man though. He was looking through a newspaper, and I guess there's a column in the paper that is like a dating service. And then he sees all these qualities and attributes of the woman, and then like at the end of the song, I guess he realizes like it was his like ex-girl, ex-wife, or whatever the case may be. And so, but my point about it is in that song, it just shows you that even before the technology we had now with cameras, videos, and instant messaging, this kind of like way to meet strangers for the purposes of dating and getting to know one another always existed. It was just there in the newspaper. We used the newspaper before that, and so. And if we were, I guess, having this discussion in the 50s, granted, in the 50s and back in the day, going back, 60 years from now, although I would imagine that the country cared a lot more for having families in the family unit, it doesn't mean that culture of, again, the elitist culture, the entitled culture wasn't there. I just think it was supremely more dialed down because how many people were picking up newspapers to look to date when everyone was talking to their neighbors and communities really were, communities. The community did not move to the internet like the way we have it now. It's, you can literally talk to your neighbor back in those days. So, again, that's just like my rationale for it. And then to move on to the next point, like I mentioned earlier when I first started this, I'm gonna stop trying to like rub my beard. Like I'm feeling the wisdom, right? Like every wise person, like every philosopher, regardless of what culture they came from, had like crazy beards. If you don't believe me, look it up. Age, right? I mentioned age in the beginning, right? Like the way you experience dating at 20 is not the way that you experience dating at 30. And so although it is an element, I guess, to this very unfortunate and sad state of affairs, especially for me at this point in time, I just think it's like less than 10% of the issue too, because, and my explanation, the rationale for it is that society does not have the expectation on a 20-year-old man, boy, then they do on a 30-year-old man, right? If you're 30 years old and you don't have something going for you, what's going to happen, right? Like, everyone's going to look down on you, make fun of you, treat you like an earthworm, right? They're going to, they're like, damn, when's it going to stop raining so you can dig back on the ground, right? Like, no one, like, get away, right? That's how men who don't have themselves situated or have something going on for themselves at 30 are treated, by and large. I think that's fair to say. And so for women, and again, this is just mostly anecdotal experience, and it's because the only thing I can really trust is not everything you can read off of a research paper. Is society's expectation on a 20-year-old girl is not so much different from a 30-year-old woman. And it's just like my brain was actually about to collapse just thinking about that, because there's like this softness, there's this tenderness, right? Like, oh, she hasn't figured it out yet, don't worry, she's gonna get there, you go girl, don't worry, chase that bag, you're gonna get it, whatever. And so I'm all for supporting people and having their backs, and elevating them, because I don't wish bad on people. I'm not a malicious person, I'm a really chill guy, but I'm just stating, like, and I would imagine most people would agree that this is, by and large, how society, treats men and women from 20 to 30, right? Like, as a man from 20, 21, 22, 23, that weight continues to increase, because you're not going to be in a good place if you don't, work hard, do what you got to do, focusing on a laser to get where you need to go to be, financially independent and not living with your parents, right? Like, because that's embarrassing, and we don't want that, right? Like, that weight continues to increase on your shoulders, on your body every year. It's not, and I'm not saying that's not the case for women. I just think, I guess to put it in context, if every year from 20 to 21, 22 onwards, men are given a 50-pound, life brick, if that makes sense, to put on our back with every year that passes by, right? Because that's the expectation. You're supposed to be able to carry and do this much by the time you're 30, so you can have all the good things that you're supposed to have here in America, and particularly in New York City. And so we get the 50-pound life brick. Women get like the 7-pound, 10-pound life brick, right? And that's not to say that you don't have hard chargers, go-getters out there that are women. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm connoting. It's not what I'm alluding to. What I'm saying is that societal expectation, that weight, from being born to your upbringing, right? A lot more softer and tender for women than it is for men. And in general, I would say for good reason, but, there's pros and cons to everything. And so how does that translate into the dating realm? Well, my dad gave me this advice. He gave me a lot of advice about women and dating in general, because I'm very fortunate to, even though I came from poverty, that, I'm very fortunate that I had a 2-parent household. And both of my parents understood that, their marriage was duty to the family, right? Like, we come second, mom and dad come second, the kids come first. And, my dad, for every year of my life, has demonstrated that, and he fulfilled his vow. My mom became liberated of my dad when he passed away, so till death do us apart. And so, my dad is up there right now in heaven drinking golden delicious beers, and thank you, Dad. But so the advice he gave me is, Chris, you want to have an easier time with women. You want to deal with a woman that's older than you, right? And one of the reasoning for it is that, they're older, they're more experienced, they learn from their mistakes, and they'll more likely than not know how to treat you, and that's what you want, because you don't want to deal with BS, you don't want to deal with all the stuff that comes with adolescence and growing up and experiencing things for the first time. So that was my dad's logic, and he led by example. My mom is actually 6 years older than my dad, and so yeah, and that just doesn't seem to be the case nowadays, right? Like, I know in my 20s, like between 20 and 24, 25 being like the last year I probably experienced it at the level and consistency I did in my early 20s. And keep in mind that I was a Marine, and women love men in uniform and all that stuff. So I did have some wild times in my earlier 20s. Yeah, that really seems to be the case, more likely than not, right? So lower, how do you say that, lower bar right there, right? Like, so more likely than not, I would experience that truth in my dad's advice by dealing with women that were in their 30s as a young 20-year-old person in between 20 24. And then when it came between 25 27, like, that drastically declined, because my strategy in implementing my dad's advice never really changed. But I guess whatever they were putting in the water in this country, or whatever they were putting in the air, like, that change was just like instantaneous, almost overnight, where H.I.D.E.N, right, the hedonism, immaturity, delusion, entitlement / elitism, and the narcissism just is like a pour out of a can of worms, a black hole, like a white hole happened and just shot all of that stuff into our reality. Like, I don't know, someone grabbed Thanos' gauntlet and Infinity Gauntlet and snapped in all that terrible stuff to exaggerate those qualities, those elements, and and I think maybe a part of it is too, again, I'm turning 25, 26, the weight is on, the weight is building on, and then like these characteristics come into play and virtually out of nowhere, and now it's everywhere. And then now all the women that are in their 30s, even in their later 30s in some cases, all you have to do is just explore on a dating app now to confirm it, or have the same exact thing written on their bio and the same exact expectations as their younger 20s, than their counterpart that's in their 20s, regardless if it's their younger 20s or older 20s. So the women that are in their 30s are still mentally are still in their 20s. And in terms of even maturity, in some cases, from my anecdotal experience, I can say that, and we will see it as the content rolls out in this channel, is that they're still acting like they're 18, like they don't know nothing, like they never experienced the world, they don't know what the world is. All they know is me, and please me, and don't do or say anything that was going to inconvenience me. So the hedonism and the narcissism. And yeah, man, it's pretty outrageous. And so that covers up my topic there for age. And so here I'm going to start concluding and going over some closing remarks. And so I want to thank everyone again from my Facebook and friends and family that are tuning in. So I'm going to call this episode 0, the intro / sorry I messed up earlier. And kudos to me, I guess. I'm going to go ahead and play another effects here. Xbox Rare Achievement unlocked. And because I have a PS5, gotta give a shout out to PlayStation. And, because that's what women try to do nowadays. They want to live in your world. No, they want to live in their world and play in yours. And we can't allow that. So where are we going next with this? What can you expect next? So the last thing I gotta look up and then test to make sure that there's a level of quality there is the Zoom calls for open forum discussions, because that's what I want to have. Open forum discussions. And let me make it very crystal clear. You didn't see a level of spite, anger, rage, or malice in this video. You did not see anything like that. these discussions are not to dunk on women or talk BS or create smoke or whatever. It's to have a logical, critical thinking, introspection, exploration, whatever you want to call it, logical, cohesive, intelligent, mature, open forum discussion. It's a malice-free zone. So I'm going to make that very clear. So I'm going to watch the tutorials and do my homework to have that set up, and find a couple of friends that will help me test to make sure that I can do it right. And what's going to help me make sure that that all that negativity doesn't come in here, and that we're not going to allow no passive aggressive stuff. This critical thinking. We're going to use our logic, ladies and gentlemen, our logic. So no loaded questions, no misrepresentation of statements. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. All those illogical fallacies, we're spotting them out and we're throwing them out the window. So if you haven't taken a logic course yet, I strongly advise you do so. Go to your local philosophy department in your college and take a logic course. Take a formal logic course, take a formal informal logic course, because that's basically how human beings speak, since we don't speak in a format where 2 + 2 = 4. And although it has its uses and its purposes, but most people speak in an informal but logical manner, and that's how we're going to guide and maintain that decorum of those discussions. And I'm really looking forward to doing it. And I know you guys that are on my Facebook that already started posting comments on some of my posts. I know you're looking forward to it as well. And so that's one of the things we can expect. And also that the format and type of content I'm going to be rolling out, and I'm sure I'll get more ideas as the time comes, is that when I have these semi monologues, if that makes any sense, is that I'm going to accompany it with a real experience that I had. And I'm going to use anything that I have experienced in the last 3 years, for as long as I've been living alone. And some of this stuff is pretty spicy, and then I just got to check the parameters, because I don't want to have the channel shut down or anything like that. But every episode from this point forward until further notice, I'm going to have a real, actual back and forth text dialogue to not only show you guys how to find what the red flags are, what the yellow flags are, and how to detect when a woman is trying to finesse you. Because at the bottom line, this is why I'm here on the internet and putting this out, is to help you, those people who are struggling. They end up keep getting finessed, and they keep having their times wasted because they keep bumping into women that don't mean well, and they're superficial, they're disingenuous, and they can hide it really well. And I am out here to help you guys detect that stuff, detect that foolishness. And I'm going to show you from my own life examples on what it looks like, what it sounds like, and how to pick it up, and then how to handle that in a way that's not malicious, or in a way that isn't trying to undignify the other person. So we are going to maintain our grace and take the high road, but we're not going to waste our time and tolerate the games. And so my last note, and this is specifically to my boys on Facebook that saw that post about that woman who thought she was going to game me, and she sent that last text that wasn't intended for me. Hey babe, I'll see you soon. That's going to be our next episode, where we're going to discuss one of the many. So there's many different finessing strategies that women use, right? There's all these types of, narratives that they invent for themselves to try to find a way to gain from you without giving anything back, right? So they're always trying to find a way to not reciprocate. How do I cut the circle of romance off, right? Because they're only looking to get what they want from you, and it's not romance, and it's not anything intimate, and it's not anything passionate, right? That's the purpose of finessing someone, right? and we'll get into the definitions in the beginning of that. I'll be a little bit formal and do like a little professor thing, but for all those of you that were on my Facebook and that wanted to know the context and the background, the lore of that text receipt, that's going to be our first episode, when women use religion to try to finesse people, and it's going to be a 2-part episode, 2 parts, 2 different examples, same strategy. They stabbed at it in slightly different ways, but we're going to observe and examine those common denominators, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on it. And so I'm going to be a little bit better groomed and dressed up for you, and it will be a live stream, and I am going to set up the day and time for you guys to go ahead and join me on there and get involved with the spiciness. And with that, I'm going to hope that my outro plays the way I intended it to be. So thank you, have a good night, stay safe, stay well, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Sorry I called too many times. The way you left me earlier left plenty on my mind. So Henny on the grind, saying I ain't deserving you, blaming me for the fall or the decline.